This is Ed Saltzberg, and I welcome you to what I'm calling Session 6 because it's part of a training I do for my clients on the opportunity pursuit life cycle, starting with identifying opportunities right through to submitting the proposals and post-proposal. This one is called Critical Transition from Capture to Writing the Proposal. I call that point in time readiness, getting ready to write the proposal. Based on all of the positioning and competitive analysis that the organization has done. I'm also going to unveil a new pipeline measure today that I'm calling I'm calling it positioning rating, and I'm fumbling a little bit because I haven't used it before. I just came upon it as I concentrated on this section of the opportunity life cycle. For those of you that have followed my webinars or maybe seen my training or bought the training, you know that I use analytics to measure each aspect of the bid pipeline of the opportunity life cycle. And this just falls in line with those measures. I had a professor who said one time that if you couldn't measure something, you really didn't know much about it. I don't think that's universally true, but I think it certainly works for business development, especially federal capture business overall. I'm going to cover 3 topics. I'm going to go over what the pursuit life cycle training is. In addition to this one, there's several others. I'm just going to unveil what those are, and you'll see that they all really come together. I'm going to go over the opportunity life cycle itself and then focus on the real heart of this, which is how do you know if you're really ready to write the proposal? And I'll unveil that metric as well. I'll do a summary, and I have some special offers. And you can submit questions in the GoToMeeting window box on the right. You see a chat box and also a question box. Please use the question box. And if you could take a brief survey at the end, that will really help me focus the webinars that are coming up. And also, I ask you a question about a workshop that I have in mind too, which would be a paid workshop that really delves really deeply into the proposal preparation part of this overall. One question you might ask is, why should you listen to me at all? And basically it's because I've been around the block a few times. I was a corporate officer at SAIC through the 80s and into the 90s. I was fortunate to get there when it was a reasonably small company and got to near the top of the company pretty quickly. I was a partner in 2 small businesses. One we sold to CSC, that was Buyer and Company, and the other to SRA International and Newton Group, and I helped both of those companies grow explosively, really based on what I had learned at SAIC. I did a stint at Battelle running their environmental market sector, really got me into the Department of Energy environment, and then I started my own company in which I just focus on helping government contractors do their business better. Usually that has something to do with competitiveness and being better prepared for opportunities or marketing in new areas. Let me just jump right into the training modules and how they fit together. There are 8 of them, and we're working on number 6, which is the transition from capture to proposal. But I do a few overviews of the life cycle itself, of the BD process. A really good one is how project staff can really make a contribution to business development by helping to grow out contracts and keeping their ear to the ground, even if they're not a formal business development. A professional business development should be done by everybody in the company, and that's what this really focuses on. My online training, how to win more government business and save money doing it, is an online video that's part of the overall program. Bid capture strategies, which are positioning, transitioning, which is what we're doing today, bid pipeline management training, and the difference between firms that grow really strongly, explosive growth, and those that don't is how they manage their bid pipeline. This is probably the most critical part of the training. And then proposal initiation workshops, which I do with clients directly, but I'm thinking about bringing those online. So let me hop into the opportunity life cycle. Here I have a pyramid. Some people think about the funnel in order to funnel opportunities down to the ones you're going to go after and kick out the other ones. I use a pyramid, but let me just show you the different parts of this. The initiation of the pipeline or the funnel is the prospecting part, in which you're looking for opportunities, and there are various sources for that. Some of them are free, like FedBizOps, and you need to pay attention to that. Agency schedules and websites have a lot of information about forecasts for business that's coming up. Paid subscription services are really good because they put it all together, they wrap it up in a bow, and they make it a lot easier to determine what the agencies are buying. One good one is EasyGovOps. It's really cost effective, and one thing I like about this one is that it has ancillary services in here, like really deep information about firms that you don't find anywhere else because they collect information from outside the government arena. And actually some government agencies subscribe to EasyGovOps just to get access to that information. They really are a market leader in those ancillary and really important data-rich enhancements to the overall prospecting part of the opportunity life cycle. Once you've identified some prospects, you don't really have a bid list yet. All you have is a bunch of things you could go after. Unconsolidated glacial debris. I used to be a geologist. Just stuff that dropped there in front of you. You need a process to adjudicate that, to march things through a maturing process. And this maturing process in the positioning or the capture part of it is really where the leaders separate themselves from the rest of the pack. They have ways to get the right competitive information very quickly in time to make bid, no bid decisions. Make no bid decisions early because they stage the questions properly, and invest those dollars in opportunities that actually can be won. So it's a very efficient process. The online training program I had called Win More Government Work and Spend Less Money Doing It goes over some very strong analytics on how you put that pipeline together. I don't think you'll find those analytics anywhere else. But it's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is readiness. After the positioning is done and before the proposal comes out is an extremely critical period of time. And that period of time may be anywhere from a week, maybe even less, to 2 months before the RFP, request for proposal, is released. The positioning part should be done, the earliest you should start is 2 months, and that's really not enough time to do a sufficient job on getting prepared for the opportunities. 5 years, 60 months is not too soon to start, but the sooner you can start, the quicker you can determine whether or not the opportunities on that list are real opportunities that can be moved into the pipeline and through that pipeline into the readiness part. And then finally you're into the proposal and the post-proposal part of that. And this is session 8 in the training. Positioning is sessions 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the reason that readiness is so important is that you only have 30 days generally in the proposal process. So if you're waiting to do what I'm going to talk about here in terms of readiness until the RFP is out, you're going to use some of those 30 days doing things that could have been done before the RFP comes out. And if you do these things, then all of the time spent in those that 30-day window can be spent in enhancing the proposal rather than scurrying around doing things that really should have been done earlier than that. So let me just talk about what these proposal readiness items are. First of all, it takes about 9 months to do a good job on the positioning part. I had 2 months down there, maybe up to, but 9 months is about an average amount of time. And let's just say that you're done a very good job on this positioning. You know that the client favors you. I'm going to run through the analytics here just very quickly. And in this case, here we have an opportunity because the client favors us, and I know that it's an opportunity the company is capable of doing. It's an opportunity in which no company has a lock on the work, and therefore I should no bid that early. It's an opportunity in which the client sees us in focus, which means we're credible as a prime, and the customer would trust us with management of that contract. And the client favors that means we've actually tilted that playing field in our direction. We're not only on the playing field and competitive, but we've tilted in our direction. We feel very, very good about the about the opportunity pursuit. So we should have this one in the bag, and maybe it's time to break out the champagne, but then you lost. And you may have been in this situation before where you've done everything right in the positioning part, in the competitive analysis part. The client expects your bid, understands what your arguments are, and you submit the proposal and then you lose. And the question is why? So what have you done in positioning? You've determined the competitive landscape. You've determined the client preferences. You have special differentiators. You've got a theory of the team. You have everything together. But something happened between positioning and getting that proposal in. Chances are many of those good ideas never made it into the proposal because you were doing other things than adding creativity to the proposal. So the storyboard, readiness are those items that can be done before the RFP comes out. Storyboarding, developing the management plan, resume at least templates, project descriptions, sub-packages, and a few other things that will enable the proposal team to be freed up to really focus on the creative parts of the RFP. 3 days is not a lot of time to write, which sometimes turns out to be a dissertation length and quality. The single best way to determine if the proposal team is really ready to go, whether they've done all of the readiness items or not, is for management to insist on an executive summary, whether or not that summary is going to be used in the actual proposal or not. Because if the proposal manager can't write a clear, concise, compelling argument in an executive summary, why would you think they can do that in the proposal effort? So insisting on that is the technique that I always use to determine if the proposal team is really ready to go. So the issue in the readiness stage, those weeks or days before the RFP comes out, is answering the question, are we really ready for the RFP or just well positioned for the client? This slide came out of another training that I do, and there's a bunch of check boxes here. And here you check off yes if your company tests the proposal team before launching the proposal. Very often that's not done by firms, whether they're large or small firms. Very often they don't really use a technique to test whether or not that proposal manager and that proposal team is really ready to go. So I covered the life cycle of a pursuit, talked a little bit about what readiness is all about and why it's important, and now let me jump into more about what the activities should be in a well thought through, well executed transition from capture or positioning to writing the proposal. I have two goals that are really important, so let's start with those. The first goal is that management should insist that the red team scores 80%. Remember that the red team is a review that's done by professionals well along in the proposal effort, so maybe 2/3 of the way through, where those senior experienced folks actually score the proposal just as though they were government employees with the actual proposal. If the proposal team doesn't score 80% at that point, 80% of the points, then with the last 20 or 30% of the time that's left, it has to raise the score significantly rather than polishing up and really getting down to the point where you're differentiating yourself from the competition. If management doesn't insist on an 80% score, then the proposal team really has nothing to kind of shoot at here. What you might get is situations I've seen where the proposal manager comes in and says, well, we didn't really finish the draft to be red team, but let me tell you how it's going to look. Well, there's a big gap between thinking or articulating how you're going to do it and actually doing it. You know that it's much more difficult to write it than it is to talk about it. So if the team doesn't score 80%, chances are you're going to be leaving good ideas on the cutting room floor and never get them into the proposal. This is why readiness is so important, so that all of the other things are being done and the proposal team will only focus on getting an 80% score in the red team so that they truly can spend that last little bit polishing up and increasing the score. The reason you need to do that is you're not going to score all of the points that you could score, the maximum that your positioning got you, unless you score 80% in the red team. When I came into Iearned Company and I took over and ran half of the company, and I came out of SAIC, and we had a really good proposal approach, and bringing the 80% concept, I brought that 80% concept with me. And the very first proposal that we worked on in my group, I did run the proposal, but I also wrote the management chapter, and it was the only chapter that scored 80%. I think I modeled that really pretty well. We did end up winning the contract, but the other sections were brute force in order to get them done. But the management chapter was really close, and I kind of sailed through with that one. I work with a small DoD company, and they're a sub on a Navy weapons contract, and they had me work with the prime and go to the red teams on the prime, and the proposals, and I went to 2 of them, and this is a substantial firm, experienced firm, been around about 25 years. They didn't score anywhere near 80% on the red team. I know that I could have beaten that firm with just a couple of subs because I would have paid much more attention to getting the complete score by the time of the red team. So it doesn't really matter how experienced a firm is or how long in the tooth the firm is in the business. Many firms don't set that goal up for the proposal, and as a result of that, lose contracts, lose procurements, lose competitions that they should have won. The second goal is to not overrun the proposal budget, because it's just the fiduciary responsibility here for the proposal manager is to bring that project in, just like a proposal is just like any other project. Bring that project in within budget. Indirect dollars are very, very dear, especially in tight times, and proposals very often can run open loop, so that you get into the red team, and if you scored 40%, now the proposal manager and management is kind of stuck. Not only don't you have a very good proposal, it's going to take a lot of money and time to fix it, and you're going to overrun the budget. Squeezing an extra proposal each year out of the bid list is the way firms grow explosively, and you can't do that unless you maintain the proposal budget on each effort. And I've got some tips here on how to do that pretty well. So now I've told you what you need to do in getting ready to write a proposal in that readiness period. Commit to an 80% score in the red team and have a way not to overrun the proposal budget. I don't think I just told you anything you don't know. But let me tell you something that maybe you don't know, which is how to do it. So understanding what to do is important, but understanding how to do it is really the point of this exercise, the point of this training. And I'm going to get into some real specific techniques for you to make sure you score 80% of the red team, are ready for the opportunity, and you don't overrun the proposal budget. And these are tactics. Readiness actions are, and I'll just define them, everything that can be done before the RFP is issued. That includes theming and storyboarding the proposal arguments, drafting a compelling executive summary, whether you submit it or not, proof, determining if the proposal team is sufficiently prepared before starting to write, getting subcontractors to deliver proposal inputs on time so they're not dragging you back and really stressing out the proposal team because not all the material is there. Developing a proposal budget that doesn't get overrun. Readiness actions are everything that can be done before the RFP is issued so that the full 30 days are devoted to writing. Let me just march through these. But before I do, let me just answer the question, can all readiness actions be done before the RFP is issued? I tried to flip those words around, but they just didn't work. So here's the readiness section, again, with some of the activities. Sometimes, now we're talking about pre-RFP, so I don't have an RFP to shoot at here. So the question is, can all the readiness actions be done? Well, the answer is maybe not. But many of them can be done regardless of whether a draft RFP or an old RFP is available. In some cases, maybe you can't get to the level of detail that you could if you did have a draft RFP out and had all the sections in it. So here's a few alternatives for finding a basis for developing the readiness actions, especially the theming and the storyboarding part. The old RFP, the draft RFP, maybe an RFI, or requests for proposals from similar programs for similar types of support. And I'm doing an exercise with a client right now where there's 3 Seaport E task orders and now a full and open contract, standalone contract coming out of the same client, and we're using the Seaport E organization and evaluation criteria for this standalone, full and open readiness set of activities, because that looks like the way they're organizing proposals now for these kinds of clients. So sometimes the proposal effort can be separate from the readiness effort. Sometimes they're going to merge together because you can't get everything done to fully until that RFP comes out, like perhaps the annotated outline. So I've given you a few of the things that should be in the readiness in the list of readiness activities. Let me talk about this new metric that I measured. I have a metric for the early part of the pipeline, for the middle part of the pipeline, the later part of the pipeline, that lets management know whether there's enough activity and dollars in each one of those stages or sections of the pursuit or maturity of the pursuit to meet the financial goal. And it really does come down to arithmetic. If all you bid are out of the later stages of the pursuit, which means you're very competitive, you're never bidding flyers, some of those opportunities you've tilted in your direction, you're going to win a large percentage of those. And I show you in the online video training just how to do those calculations so that management can really control the bid pipeline. But I just came across another measure that I call the positioning rating. It's a metric concept at this stage, so I'm going to give you the concept, although I don't really have numbers associated with it yet. So the positioning rating is how well you've completed your positioning for that opportunity. And it's a little subjective at this point. So let's say that I've got a scale of 0 to 100 on the positioning rating, where 0 is not very well positioned and 100 is very, very well positioned. And over that 2 to 5 year period, I'm going up this curve, and I'm up to this point. That looks like maybe 85%. So I'm really not bad. I'm not at 100% based on some notion of the competitiveness of the opportunity. But if there's no firm that has a lock on the work, it might be that this is the competitive range right over here that I'm in. And now I move into the readiness period where I should be theming, I should be doing the storyboarding, I should have my sub-packages out, should have my budget in place, I should have oriented the chapter leaders so that they know what they're doing, so that when that RFP comes out I can hit the ground running. And if I do, here's my expectation. That 85% isn't going to change at the end of the readiness period and the start of the proposal period, so that I'm really ready to get all of those 80% ideas or 85% ideas into the drafting of the proposal. Alternatively, I could get stuck and not have written that executive summary, not have a clear idea of how to start this proposal effort, have a bad experience in the red team, and really erode my position in the proposal, not get all of the arguments in and proved, and end up with maybe a 60%. So you can see that there is a really strong relationship between positioning and submitting the proposal that's either maintained or degraded in that 1 week to 2 month period, the readiness period before the RFP comes out. And the concept itself may be sufficient. I may not need to harden up those analytics and get some real benchmarks, because in the end, really what I want to do is change behavior so that companies, clients, people that come to my webinar see the value and the importance of spending time on readiness, doing the planning, before you actually pick up the writing. one of my sidekicks and I, Jimmy Baker, who wrote the book on how to find the money, the government contracting money, called How to Win Work from the Federal Government or from the Government. And I talk about a little anecdote about Abraham Lincoln, and where he said that if he had 4 hours to cut down a tree, he'd spend the first 3 hours sharpening the axe. And that's really what we're talking about here. Readiness is the period in which you sharpen the axe and don't go into that proposal writing effort with a dull axe. Okay, so how do you get high scores in the proposal red team? Well, let me talk about what poor drafts do first. First of all, they waste the time of expensive senior reviewers. There's no way you're going to save money in these proposal efforts and reinvest those in higher probability efforts. You're going to miss the chance for important critiques from experienced staff. You're going to leave the proposal team scrambling to finish instead of adding creativity to the proposal, increase proposal costs. They're all negative experiences for everyone. There isn't anything good about a poor red team draft. Red team draft that scores 80% doesn't waste the time of expensive senior reviewers. They actually get some input here that can be used in that polishing period to try to get the extra 20%. You get valuable input, spend the final days polishing, saves money, increases the chance of winning, are positive experiences for everyone. It takes just as long to write the proposal early, write the section early as it does late. Write it early so that you can get through enough drafts to get an 80% score in the red team, and you'll benefit from all those valuable results on the right. Okay, theming and storyboarding, which is really the topic of session 8. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, and if people are interested in the survey, just tell me you're interested in that training session, and I'll do a free one online. The best way to determine whether or not the best way to get the theming and storyboarding done is through an annotated outline, but that's through the best available sources and laying out the graphics. There's a lot of ways to do the storyboarding. The way I like to do it is just get in a room and lay the graphics out up around the wall, and with maybe one wall per chapter, and just mock out those graphics so that if they're tables, the column headings and the titles are very, very clear and they map back to the evaluation criteria. They should all be meaningful. Pin that to the annotated outline and just prepare to fill in the narrative. So if you've got your graphics there, the narrative becomes really easy to fill out. The graphics should explain the win themes that you have for your team to distance yourself from the competition. I like to use a war room because it's collaborative, and a war room is just a room dedicated to that proposal where you bring people in frequently to look at the graphics, share those insights so that there's coherence across the proposal chapters. I'm going to spend a little more time on the executive summary and speed this up a little bit because I only scheduled 45 minutes, and I do want to leave some questions to the end. If I run up to the hour, and if any of you want to stay, I'll stay and answer questions until you don't want to hear them anymore. So what does an executive summary do, first of all, and what are you accomplishing here, and why is it so important? Does it summarize the proposal, or does it substantiate the reasons why the customer should buy from you? Well, obviously it does the second. It's not an abstract of the proposal. So if you wait until the end and abstract the proposal, you're missing the opportunity to explain to the client, to the reviewer, why they should choose you. What's the compelling reason to choose your company? So it doesn't have to be organized explicitly like the proposal is organized, because you're telling a different story here than you are specifically in the way the proposal itself is organized. So should you write the executive summary last once the proposal is done, or first to prove you know the arguments for getting the award? Well, I already gave you the answer to that one. You need to get the arguments out there before. As a manager, I want to know the proposal manager, the proposal lead, does know what those arguments are and can write them succinctly. And second, I want to get that started so that they can be shared with the chapter leads because those are the arguments that I want to see reinforced within the proposal itself. So here's a comment that I picked up from a book I was reading about an experience that this trainer had. And it says the client just won a major contract with the FBI. At the debriefing, the FBI's contracting officer said, "Your executive summary was so good, we knew we were going to give you this award by the time we got to page 2. Now that's a good executive summary. In fact, it was so good I took it home and read it to my husband so he would know what we do. So the executive summary is all about the client and about the proposition that you're bringing in, but not so much about the company. I got this from a book, How to Say It, Business to Business Selling by Tom Sant. He's a very good marketer. I would recommend that book if you want to just pick that up. And the slides that I have coming forward from here, I pulled out the organization from the way he presents it because I just really like that, the way he does this. So let me just show you what the way an executive summary should really be organized. It should be persuasive. That means presenting your content in the following order, and the order matters. The order absolutely matters. It should show the need, demonstrate you understand the client's business and the key issues or problems, what the outcomes are that they want to, that the client wants, and what you'll help them get to by addressing those needs, specifically what the solutions are that will solve those problems and deliver the results, and provide some proofs that you can deliver that solution on time. You've done it before, you've done pieces, you have a new approach, you've got some technology that you're bringing in that's maybe commercial that you're bringing into the government, but tie those things up. Needs leads to outcomes, leads to solutions, and then back all of that up with the evidence. And the reason that order counts is because when people are making decisions, that's the order that they think, and that's what they would like to see. That's what grabs their attention. As a client, that's what drives their attention, because they want to know, what pain point are you going to be solving here? What are you going to be doing for me based on the proposal that you're submitting? And you want to tell them that in the executive summary. Many companies don't do that. They start out executive summaries with a focus on the vendor, on the company's history, its capabilities, and they march through all about them, how great they are, and by the way, we'll do a good job for you. Those are really death moves overall. Make sure the content is client-centered. To do that, you should be able to answer these 7 questions in that executive summary. What's the customer's problem? Why does it matter to the customer? What outcomes does he want to achieve, he or she wants to achieve? Which outcomes of those matter the most? What are the solutions? Which one's the best fit? And what differentiates us from others who may be bidding on this opportunity? If you can't answer these questions, go back and find out the answers, talk to the prospect, reach out, get a coach who knows that office really well, or I'd strongly consider no bidding this opportunity because you're not getting it. That clear, concise, compelling argument's not coming out. You don't know enough to write the executive summary. Offer a compelling proposition. Look at the answers to question 4. And the question 4 was what outcome matters most to the client, which then becomes the basis for your value proposition. You're making the prospect a promise. This is going to be a better experience for you. You're going to meet all of your goals if you choose us. You want to quantify how much more they're going to get and back that promise up by referencing your proofs. Proposals shouldn't be about claims. They should be about proofs. We're really good at this, is one way to talk about your capabilities. Or you can say, we've been doing this for 10 years, never overrun to contract. Here are 4 testimonials from clients. They've all hired us back again for that job. Much different to give the proofs than it is to give the claims. You can do all of this in a short paragraph, but you must leave in the value proposition completely. Because if you don't, you're telling the buyer, if you don't have that value proposition in there, this is really important, this especially in lowest price, technically acceptable environment that we're in, and with many clients where they're going to march, they're going to level the playing field, get down to the low bidder. If you don't differentiate yourself with the value statement, what you're really telling the offer is that what you're offering is a commodity and they should buy it from whatever supplier is cheapest. Now, in an LPTA environment like we're in right now, you still are being dragged down. Your prices are being dragged down, but you can buoy them up somewhat and sometimes a lot with the strength of the value proposition that you're making. You want to give that project manager a reason to go back to his boss or her boss over to contracts and make that argument that they really need your bid, even if it is a little bit higher. Fourth, write clearly. Too often proposal writers, they lapse into languages that are really not languages. They're kind of pseudo-languages. And fluff, guff, geek, and weasel. Be careful of this. Fluff, undefined, grandiose words, world-class, best of breed, unique. They don't mean a thing. Don't tell them that you're world-class. Tell them why you're world-class and what evidence that you have. Jargon, acronyms, just guff, only overly complicated vocabulary. Just avoid it. You don't know who's reviewing it. They may not understand your vocabulary. Language that's inappropriate for the audience, it's just too technical or too specialized. Words that don't lack any affirmative statements. Would, could, might, maybe we'll do this. You want to tell them what you're going to do. Be specific. Give them a timetable and give them something to hang their hat on so that they can see that you're really backing this up. Focus on these 4 best practices to write an executive summary that's so good that your customer takes it home to read to the family over dinner. Okay, so now you've got a good executive summary. Let me turn to the proposal team. How do you know that the proposal writers are ready to go? The technique that I use is as a proposal manager, I want to approve the annotative outline before they write it. I want to approve the graphics before they write it. A war room with the graphics up around the wall is a good way to do that. And I just insist on that. And then I walk around a lot, look over people's shoulders, remind them about the RFP criteria, have them pull those criteria out, making sure they don't drift away from the evaluation criteria in the annotated outline. There's more I could talk about here, but let me just move this along. Getting subcontractors to deliver on time. You know, subcontractors don't generally take the proposal as seriously as the prime does, so they're apt not to be meeting milestones. So I want to make it easy on them. Prepare a complete subcontractor package. In the readiness stage, you get it to them right away with templates, project descriptions, pricing templates, example commitment letters, everything in there so they can't say, well, I had to do something from scratch. They should just be able to fill in the boxes. Insist on complying with proposal deadlines and get that commitment in the teaming agreement. A commitment has to be a commitment. If there's no commitment, you're not going to make 80% in the red team. If there's no commitment on the subcontractors, they're not going to get their material in on time. So tie that to the teaming agreement that you're really expecting them to deliver, and try to make that as clear and explicit as possible. Developing the proposal budget. Well, here's a quick way to do that. First of all, figure out who's going to write the proposal, who the leads are, and who the staff is. Negotiate the level of effort. The collaborative approach to developing budget, I think, is the best one. Work with the chapter leaders, get a good estimate, just like you would run a project. You wouldn't run a project open loop, a task order from the client. You develop a budget. How are you going to develop those budgets? You're going to break it down into its elements, work with the people that are responsible to those elements, get an agreement that that proposal plan, that pricing makes sense, the number of hours makes sense, and get the agreement to put in extra time to maintain that budget. You know, in full-time accounting, you have to really be careful about your charging practices. You can't charge to contracts while you're working on proposals. You want to, if you're in full-time accounting, whatever extra time you're putting in, you know, really has to get spread between direct and indirect. But a good way to look at proposals is that there's a lot of training going on in proposals, and from a chapter lead standpoint, I really want to win the contract. I want to work on that contract. I want to learn more about the client and its program, and I'm willing to put in my own time on that. So there are things that can be argued, and I always would check with your internal contracts office how you're looking at this. But there are things that I can do and have been told I can do on a proposal or on a project to enhance and improve the project because I'm going to do that on my own time because it's part of my training and my investment in that overall. So you want to get all of that clear so that you can maintain the proposal budget, and I would just write it down, get the agreement beforehand so that there's no confusion, there's no missed expectations in the end, and things don't run open loop. If that budget is in place like that and the goal is 80%, and people know that if they don't make 80%, that there's going to be some long nights and weekends, whether they're billed or not billed, or however they're billed, you're much more apt to get both the 80% hit in the red team and also the budget maintained. Before I get into the summary of this, and we've got about 5 actual minutes, I want to point you to some additional webinars that are coming up. I'm doing one on bid pipeline management. I'm doing 3 with Jimmy Baker on the development of business cases for HHS for the Department of Justice, and then a really interesting one on we're calling Social Media Bootcamp for Government Contractors with Mike Heckman, who's a social media professional in the government space. If you come to that, you're just going to learn a ton out of that one about how to integrate social media into your business development program and your marketing program overall. In the exit survey, I have a question about a workshop I'm thinking about, and I haven't scheduled this, but I'd just like your opinion. Would you pay $50 for a 2-hour online workshop to work with, in which I dissect an RFP, create the storyboard, and the annotated outline as a real demonstration of how you do this right? Just answer the question. I have a few ancillary questions around that. If $50 isn't the right price and things along those lines, because it's really intense for me to do this and do the workshop online, and there are other things I can't do. So even though I don't charge for the webinars, I would charge for a workshop like this. Just want to see whether anybody would be interested. I do have 2 offers I want to talk with you about and see if this resonates with you. We talked about readiness here today, and I have a service I call proposal piloting, in which I spend a little bit of time with firms, especially small businesses that don't have maybe seasoned professional business developers within their company, to help make sure they get all of the points in which they're positioned for. So if you're up at that 80% line in your positioning rating, that you don't get dropped down to 50%. So I provide some advice, some advisory services on the readiness actions. I could maybe even develop those with you, perhaps participate or organize the red team. And I provide remote support at a discount. If you're in town, I can work with you. If you're not, then you can do this remotely. And it's not a whole lot of hours, so it's not all that expensive. But I'm taking a proposal that's launched in that direction and making sure it's launched directly at the target, so you score all of those positioning points. Because in the end, it's cheaper to pay me a little bit of money than lose a well-qualified pursuit. Second, and you can contact me here directly if you're interested in that and proposals that are coming up. I have to kind of plan that because it sometimes gets busy to really do that. So I also want to offer a big discount on my online video training, which goes over all of the analytics. It's called Win More Government Work and Spend Less Money Doing It. It covers positioning, the opportunity life cycle. It's 2.5 hours of insights, tactics, and examples. And whether you're a BD leader, president of company, CEO, or staff, you're going to learn a lot out of this. If you're seasoned, then some of the more introductory stuff won't be that important to you, perhaps, but the process certainly will. If you're a manager of a company, then the management tools that I show you in here to make sure that your pipeline is really a meaningful pipeline and things are moving through it effectively so that you're going to meet your financial goals. How to stage that and how to measure that is just so critical. As my professor says, you don't know much about something if you can't measure it. And I'm just offering it for $79. If you go up on my website, you'll see I sell it for a lot more than that, but I've been doing it for several years, and I'm just interested in getting more of that out, especially as I move into some new concepts. It's streamed directly to your desktop. And I get people say the nicest things to me about that training series. It's high level in some areas, but people walk away with really concrete approaches I think strategies are important, but I think tactics are what separates the winners from the average firms, and the training is full of tactics. Jimmy Baker, who's a fellow I work with all the time, offers his book. The book is only $6.99 on the Kindle edition. I keep promoting the book, and I don't get any money to do this. I just think it's a great book, and I feel like I'm doing everybody a favor by telling you about this. But if you do send him your receipt for this by about the 20th, if you do buy it, send him your receipt by the 20th, and he'll schedule a free 45-minute consultation sometime between now and the end of the year. And what you get out of that is you can ask him questions and talk about how you actually use those sources of information to find where the government is spending money. And he goes into the business cases, the OMB circulars. It's eye-opening to see what you can get to really hone your business development program towards where the money is overall. And then finally, I mentioned Easy Gov Ops. And this is a new business intelligence service. You've heard of Input and ePipeline and Centurion, and there are others around, but Easy Gov Ops is really coming up. And Jamie Breton is here, and I told Jamie he could say a word or two right at the end about what Easy Gov Ops is about, and the 30-day trial that he'll schedule for anyone that uses the ERS promotion code, so you get to really delve into this. It's not a very expensive solution to determining what to do the prospecting, to lead your prospecting overall. So Jamie, if I still have you there.
Yes, you do, and thank you, Ed, for the intro. You know, we would like to offer, obviously, all participants part of this webinar, a 30-day free trial. You know, and obviously just taking a 30-minute demo just to kind of partake in kind of vetting our tool. But we provide all the opportunities, obviously, in the federal space. We're not state and local. We focus all our efforts and endeavors with the federal space. But, you know, all the opportunities, you know, contract data task orders, you know, expiring contracts, what we call pre-forecast RFPs. Some of the labor pricing module information would be quite useful to a lot of folks. We have 35,000 companies with job titles and job descriptions that you can actually look for like-minded revenue streams of other companies that are perfect matches for you to kind of, you know, decipher where your cost points should be for each job title or, you know, job description. Those are some of the facets of our tool. We're considered the most affordable market intelligence tool actually in the country. And, you know, quite frankly, with the 30-day trial, we'd love to have you partake in that. It's roughly about a $300 value, $299 value. We provide what we call the gold plan, which is 5 users. So we definitely want you and your team to actually take part of that 30-day cycle. And that's a quick overview. It's very simply easygovops.com, easygovopps.com. And my name is Jamie Bratton. If you have any questions, let me give you my email address, which is very simply jbratton, B-R-A-T-T-E-N, at easygovopps.com. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. And the business intelligence services all go to the same place to get the basic information about the contracts. It's what they add in that really is the differentiator, and Easy Gov Ops has some real advantages there in terms of pricing. So here's a quick summary. Everything. We're talking about readiness. What is it? Everything that can be done before the RFP release should be done. That devotes the entire 30 days to creative writing and not preparation. Best to get the commitments to meet deadlines with best efforts from both the writers and the subcontractors beforehand. And, you know, when you get into the red team and you don't have a very good draft, I hear the complaint or the defense, we didn't have time to do it right. Get 80% in the red team, but the team did have the time to do it over, which doesn't make any financial sense. So don't be this proposal team. Get your readiness list together and execute that list a couple of weeks before the RFP comes out. Okay, that wraps that up, and let me see what we're doing for questions. Oh, there are a bunch here. Okay, what do you do when you don't have old RFPs and drafts to reference? We're just starting out. let's see, is that one question or two? That's one question. Okay, we're just starting out, so you don't have anything to go back on. Well, one reason why I offer that service is sort of help you figure that out. But you know, if you take a proposal, if you could, for example, look at a contract that's been issued by that office recently, or a proposal that's been issued by that office recently, and at least use the same evaluation structure. But if you don't know what that scope of work is going to look like, or have some idea of what the client is looking for, then you probably haven't done your positioning right or well enough, and you have more problems than not having an RFP to work against. So I think that you can find something to use for structure, but you want to convince yourself that you do have a good idea of what the requirement is going to look like, and that you have to be talking to the customer in order to really get that. Seems like it'd be easier to score positioning in hindsight, but I'd like to know my positioning score pre-RFP. While I can still do something about it, is it possible to score it real time rather than looking back historically? Well, actually, you know, I haven't defined what 50% or 75 or 80% really looks like. But if you were to take a look at some of the material that I do online or in the training, you'll see that I have the stages structured so that I think the next step here for me is to really come out with a way to quantify the series of activities that are necessary, so you know where you are in that positioning rating. So it's not that you want to get to the end of the positioning, stop there and look back. It's you want to check in on what your score is, and it's a good way to guide the positioning. But I think that's a really good question. You know, you don't want to wait until the end. You want to be tabulating that along the way, and I'll give that some thought and come out with some good guidance on what that really means. Question is, will the slides be ready? Yes, I'll have the slides out hopefully by the end of the day. I'll also post the video so that you can take another look or let other people know that it's available. Let's see, would you pay for a workshop like that? Yes, I would. Well, thank you very much. Times are hard right now. Several losses, maybe later in the year. I understand that. And let's see, the last question is, as a small business new to the business, how do I get started, new to government contracting, how do I get started overall? Readiness is a little far down the line. Starting with the positioning and determining lining your qualifications up with what the customer is buying. That first step to get engaged with the government is not an easy step, and I don't want to trivialize that at all. If you're new to government contracting, you do have a lot to learn on how to win that first contract, and there are various routes to do that, through marketing directly, through sales directly, through longer-term marketing, through getting to know the clients, using some of the sources that Jimmy Baker talks about in order to get that initial overview of where the government is spending, especially its new money. The Easy GovOps service gives you a list of opportunities that are coming up in a time frame that you can get positioned for. But I think you probably need some good advice from maybe another company that's doing this now and can show you, how to really get involved with the federal business. The federal government spends something like $450 billion a year on services. Even in a down market like we're having now, knock 20% off that, you're still talking about a pile of money. There's a preference for small businesses across the agency. It is a good time to get into the business because it really isn't going away. And with the tilt towards small businesses, this can be a really good source of revenue. It just won't happen immediately. The time frame is a year to 2 years, so you really want to set that time slot aside to really do an effective job to get in. Now, you could get lucky, and if you have a real specialized skill that the government needs now, as long as you can match that up, you can probably get a hit right away. But if your services are a little bit more general, then that's probably not the case. And unless one slipped in, that was the last question. We're over by only 10 minutes. I appreciate all of you who stayed to the bitter end, and it looks like you all did. Thank you very much for your attention, and look for an email from me with the access to the slides. And please consider signing up for the webinars that are on this list. If you go up to my website, ersadvisors.com, you'll see the list there, and also the videos for the webinars that we've done in the past year. So with that, I'm going to sign off on the webinar, and thank you very much for sticking with it.